I love how you have got your cup of coffee like a talk show host. And today on our show, we have a special guest.
Hello, this is Xain Russell, and I have been playing Final Fantasy XIV for just over a year now, and recently I got my cousin into it.
Heyo.
I sort of roped him in a few months back. We played a fair bit of it before we took a bit of a break. Just this last month, we got caught up with the Around Reborn stuff, and then just yesterday we finished up the patch cycle, and now we've sort of decided, let's talk about it. Let's go over how a new person feels about it, and how someone who has seen all the way up to the end of the game feels about going back to it. I have played all the way through the main story, like all the way up.
How many hours did you look up you had?
It was just 12? About 60 hours, just on one character.
But your main account, you have like over 1,200 hours.
Something like that,
yeah.
Yes.
So you know the game backwards and forwards.
Yeah. And on my main account, it's something like 60 days.
Yeah. I want to kind of give a little background, how we got here, I guess you could say. And then, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about. And really, so I clocked in just beelining the story, ignoring essentially side quests, playing as White Mage Healer. I clocked in at like 74 hours, I think we said, 73 hours, to get to the very end of Realm Reborn into the first step of Heavensward.
Yeah, it was something like 3 days.
Yeah.
All told.
3 days and some change. Okay, so here's background for me. I started playing World of Warcraft like a lot of people did back in like 2007 or 8 or something like that. And that was big. I really felt I started playing with Burning Crusade. And then when Wrath of the Lich King came out, like, I was all into that. I got into raiding, got into guilds. Loved the game. Had a lot of fun. And I played it, Cataclysm. I kind of started to fall off. I kind of came back. I didn't like how the game was being changed. I've always had that MMO itch. Because really, that was my first PC game. Because I was playing it on my mom's really shitty, tiny, like, mom computer, you know? And then I actually got my first gaming PC in, like, 2009. And that kind of changed everything. But anyway, and I haven't looked back since. But with that in mind, I had probably the same amount of view in WoW from just looking for raids or doing battlegrounds or, you know, anyway. So, like, I'm well versed in the MMO sphere. So coming into Final Fantasy, I've had a few friends tell me this. Xain here has been like, I should check it out. You know, it's really good. I'm like, all right, I'll check it out. And so the sell wasn't hard for me. But the game starts at a snail's pace. There's a lot of reading, and there's a lot of, like, names thrown around, and because there's not a lot of voice acting in Realm Reborn...
Speaking of names, I introduced you as my cousin, but who the hell are you?
I am Nolan.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. No, that's good. So... And then we started playing it. It was me, you, and one of my friends. And I was like, okay, you know, it's okay. I felt like a lot was being thrown at me, and the world was not what I'm used to at all. I've dabbled in other MMOs. This one it just feels different. I don't know even how I could describe it, like, anyway. It just kind of feels different. Maybe it's one of those things where over time I can maybe fine-tune my thoughts. But anyway, and it was, I'm not gonna lie, it was rough. And you kept telling me, like, it gets better. And I'm like, where does that peak happen? Like I said, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
There was one night, like last month, where, for those who have played the game, we played basically from the first Titan fight. And we played basically all the way to Praetorum, to the fight with Gaius. All the way to the end of the base game.
Until 5 a.m. We
5
stayed up
a.m.
until 5 a.m. because me and you both said, let's do it. I don't know if that's when it started to hook me, but I contacted you after I took this break because I'm like, I don't know if I like this game. It's kind of kooky. It's weird. Most of the main story quests are just plain messenger. Take this note to this guy. Okay, now take that note back to the guy. There's a lot of, like, story, which the MMOs I'm used to, it's super action focused. In this game, I would say it's almost 50-50, or they're trying to make it 50-50. You almost can't tell someone that when you're starting off an MMO, because that would turn off a lot of people.
Yeah. The thing about how, like, some, like, World of Warcraft, how they tell their story, is, like, they give you this paragraph. Each quest, they give you a page of what the story of the quest is, whatever dialogue the NPC is saying. They just give you a page of a book to read.
And then at the bottom it says, go kill, go collect, go find, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then they go, go on your way. You're on your way.
It's very easy to, okay, I don't really care about the story of this quest, so I can just scroll to the bottom and say, okay, what do I need to look for? What do I need to do? But here in Final Fantasy XIV, there's cutscenes with dialogue boxes that you have to click through.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just pass over that. I mean, there's a skip cutscene function.
Which, for the record, when I first started and I had no idea what was going on, I used that a lot. When I got to this certain point, which I think is when we started fighting like Titans and stuff, I stopped using skip cutscene a lot because I started to read more and pay attention, or I tried to pay attention. I asked you a ton of questions. I still have so many questions. I'm double checking names, who's with who. There's a lot of moving parts. Unlike WoW, which is pretty straightforward. It's like the classic point, there's a bad guy, go take care of them. This game, not so much.
It's really hard to try and explain to like a newcomer how much reading the game sort of expects you to do. You can't just go into this thinking like, oh, it's just an MMO. I don't really need to care about like the individual stories about whatever's going on. It's a case of they're going to tell you a story. They're going to sit you down and say, this is an RPG as much as it is an MMO. And I know that's kind of weird saying because the full name is MMORPG,
mm-hmm, right.
But this is from Square Enix. They have a long history of video games that are telling a story in addition to being a game. So you have to sort of go into this expecting that you're gonna have to listen. You're gonna have to listen to what people are saying. You're going to have to go through and pay attention to the story.
Well, from the beginning of this game, they put you into the main story that goes throughout the entire realm Reborn, which I barely even scratched the surface of Heavensward, so I'm not even really comment on that because I don't know much about that yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited, though, just the way Realm Reborn ended, of course, but we'll get to that. But from the very beginning, there's something going on. There's something really big going on. In World of Warcraft, it's go help this villager out. He'll give you some supplies or gold or experience. All right, hey, I heard there's a guard down the road. Go help him out. And it's just really like localized stuff. In this, like from the very beginning, who are the two people that first pop up?
Alphino and Ali.
Was he the first person?
Alphino and Alize are technically there from the beginning. Like when you ride into your starting town, like on the Chocobo wagon,
yeah.
Alphino and Alize are there with you.
Okay.
They don't say anything. They're sleeping on the wagon while you guys get attacked.
See, I almost want to start the game again. I want to start the game again just so I can catch all of the story stuff. Which is, I would never do that. But that brings it to, anyway. So, from the very beginning, you are sucked into not just the world, but there's this looming threat, and we all got to band together, and you're a hero, of course. But they start pushing you towards the end from the beginning, in a sense. Like, there is no serious deviation, because when there's a main storyline, there's a main storyline.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, it's what we talked about yesterday. It's all regional based, and you could do all the quests in a region, and it's kind of nice because it's got its own little like regional story and like myths and background, but it doesn't connect to anything really. I mean, they string you along to the next area, the next leveling area, but relatively you don't really get a story until you get to later game content. You know, I guess in DLCs for WoW, they help that out a bit with Cataclysm, but even like starting Burning Crusade, you enter oh my god,
Outlands.
Yes, see, there you go, thank you. You enter Outlands, and I mean, like, you get it, there's something big going on, but all the stories in WoW seem so isolated, but here, I can't get over the fact that they put you on that main road, and you stick to it. I mean, you have slight deviation story-wise, but it's character building, world building, stuff like that. You're just heading towards that final destination of the main story. It's interesting because you have to keep someone engaged for a relatively long time just to get that
3 days.
Yeah, it's like a long-ass TV show in a sense. Which, by the way, the ending, oh my god. It was like one of the best TV cliffhangers I've seen in a long time. People die, people are betrayed, there's mutiny, friends who you thought you were friends, you could be trusted, they betray you, this organization. It's all gone to hell. You are literally running through the sewers for your life, trying to escape these army of assholes that have turned on you. And it's great. I loved it. I had my jaw was on the floor the entire time, I think. I kept looking over at you with this look of, holy shit, did that just happen?
Yeah.
It was great. But you got to get to that point. And that's the hardest sell of this game is how do you tell people? You got to put in, I don't even know where it got me. I'm sure different people, it kind of sucks them in at different places. But for me, it took probably 20, 30, 40 hours before I even like started to care about characters and the world and stuff like that. And that's my biggest problem with the game. I like this game. I like it a lot, but I don't love it. And I want to love it. But there's problems with it.
When I first tried the game out back in, I want to say 2015, 2016, it was somewhere in there. I dropped out somewhere around the first trip to the Kurthus Highlands when you first find Sid and you're looking for his airship. I don't think I even got past the dungeon where you actually find his airship.
I just want to, as an aside, that's where I got hooked. We met Sid, Enterprise, which Star Trek fans a little bit, we like TNG, and I was like, hey, Enterprise, Starship, I can get behind it. And then I started paying attention to quest aims and the dialogue and how like pop culture referential it is or how much fun, like either it's a mix of English translators or the Japanese writers or both. They like to have fun with their dialogue and quests sometimes. So there's a lot of like nods. But when I met Sid and he gave his backstory, as simple as it was, I'm like, hey, he's the first character I actually want to know more about. And that's what really got me in. But getting to that point was like, oh man, it felt like a job.
Yeah.
And it's such a tough sell for new people.
That's probably one of the biggest questions I have these days. Because the cliche is telling new players, oh, it gets better. It gets better. You just got to keep with it. It gets better. But you can't really tell someone it gets better for 3 days worth. 72 hours of playtime is a lot. It's a lot to ask for to keep saying it gets better.
Plus, when you're competing with, games like League of Legends, Apex Legends, those classic kind of any sort of games where they don't really have a story, it's that competitive stuff, which people like to spend a lot of time on, which I do. We used to play HOTS a lot until that kind of is slowly dying, but that's another story for another time. It's I have a friend I want to ask to play, but I'm still trying to come up with how I want to sell it to him, because I'm not going to say, oh, when you get 3 days in, when you put 40 hours, then the game really starts getting good. I can't say that because nobody's going to go, oh, great, I have to put 30 plus hours before the game gets quote unquote good.
Which is a shame because I honestly feel that the game is good during these opening hours. It's just, it takes a certain kind of person to really get into what A Realm Reborn is offering right off the bat. If you are interested in the small stories, the small-scale stories, the first 15 levels might give you that.
Yeah.
Because you're a new arrival into one of the 3 city-states, and there's a unique sort of story for each of the city-states, and it's all about meeting people around town and then coming together because there's like some sort of problem going on. I know in Ul'dah, there's like some sort of traitor amongst the ranks of the Sultan Sworn, I think. Those are the paladins.
Oh, yeah.
I might be misremembering that because it's been a while since I went through the Ul'dah opening story. And that's the sort of thing you go through. You don't get on the rails for like the big world-ending threats immediately. But once you meet the Scions of the Seventh Dawn and they start introducing the primals and all that, that's when you start really going around the world, really getting on the rails of like the big story. But I feel like I did you a disservice by getting you on that rail and just keeping you on that rail, because I told you to ignore the side quests like right from the get-go, which was a dumb decision on my part, because all of those like self-contained stories that happen like World of Warcraft, like each area has its own self-contained story, that's all present in Final Fantasy XIV. It's just in the side quests. In retrospect, if I had said, hey, every 10 levels of the main story quest, let's take a break and do some of these side quests, maybe that would have softened the blow for you a bit.
It probably would have felt less grindy. Like I said, my biggest complaint is you're just a glorified messenger for most of the game. Or it feels like most of the game. That's the thing, too, is it's just so, like, it's so monotonous. And, like, I felt like my brain was turned to mush sometimes. Because I'm like, I know, like, they're delivering dialogue back and forth. But I'm like, oh my god, I want to kill monsters. That's kind of why I play these kind of games.
Yeah. Like, you got so excited every time we got into a new dungeon or a new boss fight.
Yeah. Because, like I said, I don't think WoW really gives you a good... When I started playing WoW, they didn't really throw you a main story bone until, like I said, you got way later into the game. For me, I was like, I could just ignore all this stuff, which, again, thinking about that now, I almost wish, like, you would have held me down a lot like a Clockwork Orange style and just forced me to watch the cutscenes and read every line, because I probably would have gotten hooked in. So it's one of those things where you almost got to tell people you need to pay attention to the story. Because I was like, whatever, I just want to kill shit. I want gear. I want to do dungeons.
You almost have to sell the game. This is going to be an RPG. You are going to read a lot of stuff. If that's a wall for you, this probably isn't like the kind of game you want to play. Even during my second try last year, when I got back into the game, during my second try, I was going like, okay, let me just skim through this dialogue a bit. Maybe some of it will come up later. I was shocked going through this again with you, how much stuff got introduced in A Realm Reborn and then gets called back to later down the line. A recent example we ran into, they were talking about the students of Baldessian.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Yeah. They bring up the island, they bring up how there's like no survivors of like whatever the hell happened to it. Then they mention a name, Kryl. Now, you don't see Kryl, but Kryl is an important character starting about midway through Heavensward.
Okay.
And like she's around, even to the current content, she's still around. But they mention her in A Realm Reborn. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. They're even if they don't show these characters, they are establishing them early on. But I feel like what sort of hinders it is how they present it, because another thing you got really irritated about was how when they were doing cutscenes, they weren't consistent with what cutscenes they did voice acting with.
I mean, I haven't looked into this. I have like some working theories. It's a budget. It's maybe like they couldn't get these people scheduled. Maybe, Square Enix gave them $5 and said, see who you can find on the street for $5. And I'm not saying like the voice actors were bad. Some of them I had a great time with. But my God, when you have this much story, it's a front-loading story kind of game. It presents the story first and foremost. You got to get consistency of those cutscenes. Sometimes I'm like, is this a long cutscene? Is this a voice cutscene? Do I have time to relax? Or is this like a 5-second voice cutscene? Like sometimes they have really short ones. And that is one thing I wish they could go back and just like, I know it'd be probably a lot of money, but go back and just start doing your major cutscenes. Not all of them, just the big ones. Voice them. Get voice actors for them. Because that would help out so much. Because whenever, I've even said this, if it's a voice cutscene, I need to pay attention. If it's not, whatever. I can kind of skim the dialogue. I get the gist of it. Moving on. It's like my brain instantly shuts off as soon as I'm like, oh, people are talking. I'm not hearing anything. I'm reading. It's not that important then. Which is a big problem when, and I was thinking about this, the term is MMORPG. This should be RPG first, MMO second. Because this is a very classic kind of RPG feeling with MMO elements to it. I don't see any marketing for this, so I don't know how this game was marketed when it came out. So I don't know how they try to market it, but it's unlike any MMO I've ever played, and that's why it's so hard to kind of wrap my head around. I have so many confused feelings about this game because of that. I want to shout its praises on top of the rooftops. I do, because there's so many puzzle pieces. How many times where you hear me go, holy shit, look at that, that's great, where we're flying around the world and the architecture or just the landscape looks great, and the bosses are cool, and they got funny names, and the Lalafelds, which we don't want to talk about those. Those just make me uncomfortable throughout. I'm sure there are Lalafell fans. Like, there's so many puzzle pieces that just fit in nice. But the big one, the story puzzle piece that ties it all together, that's my feelings about it. This is a game I want to love. I'm so close to loving it, and hopefully with Heavensward on, maybe I'm sure maybe it will go on my list of like I love this game. But right now I'm not there because the story is so grindy when it should be no. Like the other stuff around the story feel grindy. The story is the prize. And I feel like the story is the grindy, and the things around it are the prize. I guess that kind of kept me going in that sense. I'll give you another example. I played The Division 2, and I thought the game kind of sucked because I thought the gameplay was boring, the gunplay was boring, but the world was great. You're running around Washington, D.C., that's like slightly post-apocalyptic, society's kind of crumbled and we're building back. And like the detail to the world was great. And that's the only reason why I kept playing it. In this game, like the boss fights, the boss fights are great. The worlds are great. The particle effects are great. The graphics are nice. Everything's great except for the story, which even that isn't true because I do like the story when you get into it.
It's the presentation.
Yes, that's it. It's the presentation where it's like they trip from the beginning. As I said, you get on a good roll with the story, you're fighting, you're getting some important information, then speed bump, we're talking about refugee politics. And I'm like, okay, but does that have to factor into the main story? And Xain is like, kinda, yeah, no, a little. It's one of those, like, it's so hard to, like, compartmentalize and explain in a positive, I don't even know. It's just difficult. See, I'm getting frustrated trying to, like,
Now, the refugee thing, like, most of these refugees are from a place called Alamigo.
Yeah.
They've been talking about it a fair few times. Alamigo is a place you end up going to. Like, Alamigo has been taken over by the Garlean Empire.
Okay,
like the evil empire.
Space Nazis.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, which is great.
It's fantasy steampunk Nazis.
Who doesn't love killing Nazis? I'm excited to kill Nazis and robots. It's great.
I mean, that is basically Stormblood in a nutshell. So that is the expansion. That is the expansion after Heavensward.
Right there, you have promises of great things to come. And that's how, I guess that's one of the, it's kind of like a user beware or make sure to read the fine print. You could sell the game as there's great things to come, but you gotta put in 40 hours before that happens.
Yeah.
It's a very like, oh, you didn't read the fine print at the bottom of the screen. And you're like, yeah, great things do come, but how long do you go before you get tired of it? Or how long do you go before you go, I feel kind of conned? And that's how, I'm not going to say I felt conned, but I could definitely feel if you send someone in cold who doesn't have much MMO experience, I would say this would probably, again, it depends on the player. I would not recommend this game to complete newbies to MMOs, because if you want that fantasy action, it's there, but it's so spaced and inconsistent. Maybe the side quests help with that. I don't know.
That's really funny because the reason why I got interested in the game to begin with, it was because this YouTube group called Brain Scratch Commentaries, they got like a sponsored video of it back in 2015 or something like that. And one of them, a guy called Some Call Me Johnny, he got into the game despite never ever liking MMOs. He really could not get into them, but he loved Final Fantasy. So he got into it because he loved the story. That's the obvious easy selling point. You market it and you pitch it to people who like Final Fantasy games because you've played them before this game, right? Actually, no.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
Before I got into Final Fantasy 14, I had only ever played Final Fantasy 15 from beginning to end.
That's the recent one, right? With the car?
Yeah, that's the one with the boy band.
Yeah. The Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And that one it wasn't a turn-based RPG for one.
Right.
It was more akin to Kingdom Hearts than. Actually, I lied. Kingdom Hearts was my first Final Fantasy game. If you want to be.
I'll allow it.
If you want to be a smartass about it.
I'll allow it. I mean, yeah, because you got... First off, and I even mentioned that, when I was playing through this, I went, this combat feels a lot like Kingdom Hearts.
Which I didn't really get that comparison. So.
Well, see, to me, I'm like, I don't know how you don't, because they're both Square Enix games, both have great like particle effects, stuff like that. The combat, to me... That's the main draw for me in Kingdom Hearts was the combat.
You're talking more about aesthetics in that case, then.
Yeah, but Kingdom Hearts always felt really good to play. Camera notwithstanding. I mean, I had a flashback to like struggling with the damn camera. But camera notwithstanding, the only one I've played through a lot was Kingdom Hearts, and the story was fine.
The first one.
Yeah, just Kingdom Hearts. The story was fine, but the combat, that's what kept drawing me back. I love the combat, the combos, the styles. And I feel like and you disagree with me, but I feel like they translated that and they put it into this MMO because we were talking about combos and how, like, if you do this combo, if you hit this, then the game will kind of tell you, hey, you want to hit this next. There's a lot of that, which I like.
I kind of see what you're getting at now. You're talking more about, like, not necessarily the fact that, oh, Kingdom Hearts is a, like, character beat 'em up and Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO. Like, you're not talking specifically about how the actual control is the same. You're talking about how mechanics.
Yes.
Like you have a, like, in both games you have a very basic combo that you run through, and you splice it with, like, different abilities.
Yes.
Okay, I can kind of get that.
That's why but I like that though, because that's what I love about Kingdom Hearts is it's like I said, I always felt the combat was so smooth and fluid because of the mechanics. That's what I like about this. White Mage, starting out as White Mage, because I've always been I love healing in games like this. I've always been a healer in MMOs. It's a little different, but when I started to mess with my Gladiator, I really fell in love with that because of the combos and the mechanics. And okay, like, if you hit them with this, then you could do this, which does bonus damage, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like a snowball effect where you gotta pay attention, which I'm going to leave that into the actual boss fights. You got to pay attention to your hotbars and your timing, and it feels much more involved than WoW. The way I played WoW when I was doing DPS is I just lined up all my spells in the proper order and just boom, 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 boom. You know, one right after another. There wasn't a whole lot of variety. In this game, when it comes to the combat, I feel like you do feel a little bit of variety. The boss fights, which, oh my god, the boss fights in this game are just to die for. My favorite one is Midgar Summer. Right?
Yes, that is closer to the end, and that's the one for me when I was playing through the game last year. That was when I really got into it. Like, that was the point where the game really got its hooks into me, because that boss fight was just chef kiss, beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. I think because, you know, it's only a 4-person one, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we wiped, I think, the first 2 times. But it definitely has that, like, I want to go again. I want to beat it because it is tough. And so the tougher it is, the more rewarding it is when we beat it. And I remember afterwards, I was like, that was awesome. I was so pumped. And that's what I noticed is the boss fights have gotten progressively better and better and better with the mechanics. Some of them are annoying as shit, but they're so involved. So as a healer, I'm not just sitting back and like, cure. No. Oh my god, I gotta dispel him. I gotta dodge this. I gotta go eat the fruit. I gotta make sure he's not frozen in a block. I gotta dispel the tank again. Oh my god, one of the DPSs is down to like 20 health. There's so much going on. And so my brain just like, I entered this zen moment where I'm like, I feel like I'm cracking the Matrix. You know, I'm like, I see code on the screen and I'm throwing spells everywhere. And my cooldown for this is up. Ooh, gotta pop it. I love that. That's what I love about a healer. Is I have to protect everybody, including myself, which is just one thing. But then at the same time, I have to be constantly aware of where I'm standing. And, oh shit, should I stay in the blue or should I go to the red part of the map? You know, like, so much going on. It creates a great sense of truly knowing a fight, too. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like your home neighborhood. The more you learn it, the more it becomes second nature. But it also means that you could take shortcuts or you could find better ways to do things. And so when you find out those shortcuts or, hey, I found that if I stand here, no matter what, even though it's only like as big as a quarter, if I stay on this quarter, I won't get hit by any of the AoEs. That happened a few matches where I was trapped and you're like, you got to run through it. And I'm like, the floor is lava and you want me to run through it. But they kept getting smaller and smaller, and if I stayed, I was dead. So then I had to make that decision. See, it's just great. The boss fights are amazing, and that's why I like this game, but I don't love it because getting to those fights can be the longest, most boring experience in your life sometimes.
Like I said, I hate using the phrase "it gets better," but in this case, it is very much a celebratory sort of saying because the boss fights in this game just keep that pace up, that they get better and better and better. At the point where when you get to the raid fights in Shadowbringers, holy shit.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I am continuously impressed by how good the fights are in this game. Like, I am queuing up for boss fights in this game just to fight them. Like, I don't even need to go through them for, like, loot or anything. I just want to fight the boss.
Yes. In the other games, I would say, oh, you face the boss and the reward is the gear. I would say the build up to the boss is the story and the boss is your reward because the fights are so fun. The bosses are, the designs are all great. I love all the even the small little bosses, like we're fighting that big toad with the spikes last night. Even the stupid little bosses or whatever, like, I love them. The amount of attention and time put into the dungeons alone, that's the reward. And that's why I want to say this game, it's like a, you almost have to have a refined taste. It's almost like a wine connoisseur. Mm-hmm. You know, you really gotta, I don't want to say know what you're getting into, but know what you want out of a game. Like, if you want good fights, this is the game to play. You gotta work for it, though. But when you get to that fight, it's worth the work you put in to get there.
Yeah. And that's all assuming you're just getting into this game for, like, the gameplay and the combat.
Right.
If you can get into the story, which, starting with Heavensward, I would say it's really easy to get into the story.
I'm excited to start again.
Yeah.
Really.
But if you can get into the story of this game, you are doubly rewarded. Because, just the example of Midgard-Sommer, the cutscenes before and after it are so good.
Oh.
Like, Midgard-Sommer himself is such a good character, such a fascinating character.
I fell in love instantly when he started talking in the cutscene. I was like, oh my god, that voice, that I don't know who they got or however they did it. It's great. You could tell he's older than time itself, and he's fucking with you. He's having fun. He's like, boom, I've taken your light. What are you going to do? But you intrigue me. I'm going to keep a close eye on you. And he's like a little devil. He'll pop up randomly.
Yeah.
This cute little dragon pet, which I love. He's so cute. It's adorable. But he'll pop up and be like, hey, no matter what you do, like when we're getting ready to go Ishgard, I think, he's like, you're going to die. No matter what you do, whatever, you do you. I'll keep watching.
You're not going to find safety here.
Yeah. He's like, it's only going to be death and destruction. Oh, well, you know, I'm still watching. I'm still here. I love that.
And the cutscene when you meet him, the camera pans up and, like, the star behind him, he's got, like, this godly
and his
halo.
Eyes, like, light up. And I was losing my shit, wasn't I? I was, like, bouncing up in my chair, like, this is great. And that's what I mean. Like, it's so great. And when you're assaulting the Empire, like, kind of complex, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Praetorum.
Yeah. That really, like, I was, again, when I met Sid, I was like, okay, all right, I can see the story aspect. And then I felt the game start to ramp up speed-wise. Did have a few bumps because they kept reiterating, like, hey, dragons, Ishgard, we need to help them. And, you know, there's a few, like, pacing issues and editing issues they could really use to edit this game down a hair. But besides that, I think the game is almost unblemished when you get to that part. And that's why I'm like, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. I want the next story. I want the next dungeon. I want it all. So when you dive in and you could really just let it take over, it's worth it. Absolutely worth it.
I would say for anyone who's looking to get into this game, look for a buddy.
Yes.
If you know someone who has played the game, ask them to make an alt or to play New Game Plus with you, and don't let them drag you around. Like, try to discover things yourself, but at the same time, I think it's a lot easier to get through when you have someone with you, when you have someone you can ask questions with.
Yes.
Like, during the slow-mos, where, like, you can start making jokes about, like, what's going on.
The dialogue,
yeah.
And, like, the crap, the cheesy voice acting sometimes. The character reactions are great. You know, like, there is a lot to love in those cutscenes, though.
Yeah. I haven't even shown you, like, the Hildebrand quests yet, which is, like, the big comic relief. Let's go all out with the animations and really twist the system to its limits.
Yeah. See, that sounds fun.
That is so much fun, and it's so hilarious. That's sort of the downside of just dragging you through the main story quest, is you missed out on all that side content that is so good. This game is chock full of so much extra content, even outside of the story and the dungeons. This game has its own Vegas.
Oh, yeah, Gold Saucer, yeah.
You can spend a good hour or two in there.
Easily.
Just playing the card game Triple Triad.
Chocobo races.
Chocobo racing.
Yeah.
It has, like, its own like events that pop up from time to time that you
Those
can
are
take
fun.
place in.
Yeah.
Like when we went there, we did the samurai one where you're trying to avoid the bamboo shoots they're falling over on top of you. But there's also one where you're platforming around like these floating islands, and that one's really neat. It really tests the limit of your maneuverability.
Yeah.
Can you jump from small platform to small platform?
That's the thing too, is content-wise, this is probably the most alive feeling world I've been in a while, where you could go to almost any corner and you'll find something. Fates. That's the thing too, this game has it for anybody. Do you like to just grind natural bosses? There's fates for you. Do you like to want to go hunting for specific things? That's the hunting log. I just discovered crafting last night. It's really fun. I'm already looking into getting into culinary and other crafting stuff because it's like a mini game. I didn't realize that the goldsmithing is like a mini game. I was like, oh, I have to like think about it instead of just like tink, tink, tink. Oh.
Yeah, all the crafting classes are like that. They have that same sort of mini game.
Yeah.
But the gathering class also has like its own sort of mini game to it. Like you don't just, I mean, you can just swing your pickaxe and get whatever you want. But if you want to get like really high quality stuff, you have to budget your gathering points, which is like, it's like the MP for the gatherers.
Yeah.
So you have to budget your GP for all of these like different abilities that raise the quality of the item. It raises the probability of getting that item. There are abilities that let you find like really rare stuff, when you're hunting around. The gathering and crafting is a lot more involved than like in World of Warcraft, where you just find a node and you right click on it. But that's what this game is. It does not halfway the content in it. It really does try to get the most out of what it has.
It tries to get you involved in every little aspect. Even the crafting, they don't want you to just, all right, craft me 30 stacks of copper ingots. You can do that, which I just discovered, thankfully, because crafting copper ingots was getting a little old. Just click. But when I first discovered it, it was fine. But it's one of those things where the crafting, the mini games, everything, there's a little like, they're not just going to let you sit back. They want you to do something, because I think it gives you a sense of accomplishment when you do, like, oh, I crafted this gold necklace and the quality's really good. You know, I'm like, hey, that's great. And so that's why this game, like, it's so deep. It really, really is deep. Don't feel guilty because you felt a little guilty about dragging me through it. I think to get me into the game, for me, you did the right thing to kind of keep, string me along. Now that I'm into the game, I like the world, I like the characters, I know the world. Now I can kind of go back on my own and kind of discover things on my own way, on my own time. That's the other thing I love, is you could have one character and you could have every single class and cooking, everything.
Yes.
Which I like. Because I could...
You don't have to go through the story again.
Exactly. Yes. And I don't have to unlock all the dungeons again. I don't have to blah, 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 blah. No. I can do that on my own time. And that's, for me, a great selling point. Because, again, there's so many other games vying our attention. Today, I just want to focus on my Gladiator side quests. Or today, I just want to do my mining or whatever. That's nice. It's like it creates a nice casualness, but also you're getting rewarded for the casualness. Yeah. So that's great.
You're not wasting your time picking up a new class just to fiddle with it a bit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I have blacksmithing and I have to do that to get this. No, first off, they actually give you like stories and quests with your professions, which is weird for me, but I like it because, again, in WoW, it's all right, blacksmithing, go. No help at all, really.
The gathering and the crafting quest lines, they put just as much effort into those as they do like the actual like combat class quests. And they didn't have to do that. They absolutely didn't have to do that.
Goldsmithing and Ulda, and you have like the guildmaster and a little whatever he is,
little robot,
Giggy or Gigi or whatever, and he's a sassy little bastard. And he's like, "Your work sucks. It's an affront to God." I'm like, "I just made a copper bar, and you're, that's great." And I'm like, what the hell is going on? He had a little Cartman moment. He's like, respect my authority. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, he does kind of look like Cartman. He's got a little poof ball on his head. and he's got like red. I was like, maybe they like South Park. See, there's so many things where I'm making connections that may or may not be there, but it doesn't matter. It adds to the enjoyment of the game. This is a game I want to endorse, but it's got to have that but.
That massive asterisk.
Yes, the asterisk that's as big as the letters itself. But if you can look past the asterisk that says there's a lot of talking, some of it can be boring, sometimes characters, I mean, there's one part where I'm like, you guys just keep going over the same goddamn ground. And I got mad and I did skip a cutscene or two because I'm like, we've talked about this shit to death. I know.
And immediately after you skipped it,
Yes.
I mentioned, okay, here's the important bit that you missed.
Right at the end. Because
Right
I was probably getting close. I was like, I know what you guys are going to say. We got to save this and we got to do this. I'm like, I know. And again, that's why, like, I'm sure hardcore fans would probably say, no, you can't edit it or whatever. But I wish you could just cut out a couple missions, edit some of the dialogue down so it's not so repetitive.
The hilarious thing about that is they actually did. What we played through was a slightly abridged version.
Director's cut.
Slightly abridged. Last year during the 5.3 patch.
What patch are we on right now?
5.5. That's the last one before Endwalker comes out.
Okay.
So in the 5.3 patch, they cut out a fair number of quests from the patch cycle of A Realm Reborn. In some cases, I'm okay with that. But some of the quests they cut out were really good character beats for the Scions. They cut out a lot of the stuff during the quest lines leading up to the fight with Ramu, like the big bearded guy.
Yeah, he was great.
They cut out a few of the quests where you're hanging out with the Scions, you're trying to make your way through the Sylphs town or whatever, and the Sylphs were playing like pranks on you and whatnot. They cut that out. They also cut out a quest during the Tataru quest line right before the end, where you're like helping her try to find, can I be more than just the Scion's secretary? Can I be like an arcanist or something? They cut out a quest where she actually tries to be a miner for a bit.
Oh, that would be adorable.
I mean, she's wearing like this little hard hat with the light on it, and
that's
she's
so cute.
She's running around Mordona trying to find gold or something, and she gets attacked by one of those big salamander things. You have to help her out.
Yeah, see, that'd be great. The Scion. All right, I'm glad you brought the Scions because I do feel like they're like, you're a Scion, and there's other Scions with you. I'm like, I feel like I almost missed something because like, well, you're a Scion. I'm like, did I miss the part where they said I was a Scion? What exactly is a Scion? Yeah, I definitely feel, I'm sure it's there, but I feel like compared to all the other time it's put into all the other people and factions, the whole Scion thing is like shoved to the side.
If you decide to either go back through the game by either doing the New Game Plus or just watching the cutscenes, because there is like a logbook in your inn that you can just watch the cutscenes for again.
Yeah.
But if you decide to go back through it, it's going to be around the Ifrit fight when they officially induct you into the Scions.
Okay.
They don't do a very good job making you feel like you're part of the group. It does sort of feel like you're an agent of the group, and you're just sent out on like your own mission. You're the one guy doing this, and maybe some of the other Scions will show up and say and drop some exposition or say, okay, I'm gonna do this while you do this. I will say that in Heavensward, very early on, they do sort of fix that by like, you do have a few fights alongside some of the Scions, and that's really nice. It does get better as the game goes on, and I can't stress how much I hate saying it gets better.
And
like
yet you have
to though.
That's how you're like, it gets better, Nolan. It gets better. I'm like,
it is both a curse and an endorsement because it starts off at such a low point, but it does ramp up to a peak and then just keeps going to the next peak and to the next peak.
And that's why, like I said, I want to love this game so bad. It's so close for me. But it's just, there's little problems that keep building up. And it's that wall from going it from it's great to I love it.
You mentioned earlier about how they must have been on a budget or something. And I think it's important to bring up at least once that this game is not the initial version of this game.
Oh, yeah.
We played through 2.0. That's what it's officially called in-house. Realm Reborn is 2.0.
Right.
1.0 was the shit show that came out and got lambasted by critics everywhere.
It's one of those things where I've heard stories of, but I haven't really done my research into. I'm curious, though. I'm going to watch that No Clip documentary, because I like No Clip. They got some good stuff.
The big thing about that is they were on a tight schedule to get 2.0 out after 1.0 flopped. They didn't just drop 1.0 immediately. They were updating 1.0 the entirety of the development of 2.0. So they had split their development team basically in half.
The way you've described 2.0, it's almost like they had to remake the game.
Yeah. Oh my god. No, they had to. It is a completely separate game. Like, they had no choice because the way 1.0 was structured, they couldn't fix the problems that were plaguing it. They had to completely remake the game in basically half the time with half the staff. You talk about all these, like, padding and stuff like that. That's probably why. Like, they just did not have the resources to completely flush out every single quest. So we had, like, these moments where you meet a character, you take a quest, you walk down the street, you talk to another character, you walk back, then you walk back, and you just walk back and forth for a couple times before the quest finally completes. That's not an excuse for how bad it is, but it is a reason.
By the way, I think it's so funny that you talk about that while you're wearing a shirt that says failure is an option. It's always an option. And that's what the developers basically said. They're like, failure is an option. Let's fix our failure. I've seen the footage of the development team going on stage and crying, saying, we are so sorry we let you down. We are going to do everything we can to fix this. That has made me, like, Square Enix is one of those studios. They're fine, sure, whatever. They've gone to the top of my list because of that.
Yeah, the development team for Final Fantasy XIV, which is currently called Creative Business Unit 3.
I was wondering what the actual studio was called.
Yeah, it's head by Yoshi P. I believe it's head by Yoshi P. That team's also working on Final Fantasy XVI, and I know he's the producer for that too. They are so devoted to this game. Like,
I can tell.
Yoshi P, the question came up during this last fan fest. They're talking about how Endwalker is the end of the storyline they've been building up since A Realm Reborn. And fans were like, is this the end of 14? And Yoshi P was like, no. This is my baby. I'm going to keep this going as long as possible.
Great.
And I loved that so much. Like, he is so devoted to this game. That tickles my heart. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's not just him. It's the rest of the dev team. Soken, the man, the myth, the legend. I love him so much. It broke my heart at FanFest this last month when he revealed that, hey, I had cancer last year, and
yeah, that's right.
And he still put out one of the best songs for patch 5.3, and I can't wait for you to see the story behind it, because you play the game with the soundtrack off, which I think is absolute heresy.
It's something I've been doing since WoW from like 2007. It's a habit for me, really.
The music has a lot of storytelling itself to it.
Oh yeah, good music does.
Yeah, and if you listen to like the lyrics of all the primal fights, they're talking about like the primals and like their motivations and whatnot. I would highly recommend turning off the side music and just listening to the soundtrack as it's playing in game.
It is a bad habit of mine. Like, it's just like, again, it's a habit I do with almost all my games, depending on the game. But yeah, I don't really have much more to say about the game because
you just want to get back into it.
I do. I want to end this right now because I'm like talking about it. I haven't even gotten to Ishgard yet. I want to go there, and we're fighting dragons now, which is not, what's more classic in a fantasy game where you're fighting dragons.
You got excited when I mentioned like what Stormblood was going to be about.
Oh yeah,
I honestly think Heavensward was that for me, because when people were talking about the plot of Heavensward, they're like, oh my god, this is such a great story. It's one of the best stories that Final Fantasy has ever put forth. And I'm like, okay, what else has it got? Oh, it's got dragons. Like, sign me up.
Well, anything dragons in you.
Yeah, I'll own up to that. People kept telling me about, here's a bit of the background details to the war. And I'm like, that sounds really goddamn interesting. And Heavensward is basically a love letter to dragon lovers. And that
makes sense.
That honestly kept me going, even as I was playing through A Realm Reborn by myself. And once I finally beat the story of Heavensward, I was like, that just shot this game up to like the top of my list of my favorite games of all time. And it didn't shoot it all the way to the top. That was Shadowbringers that shot it all the way to the top.
I'm really excited for Shadowbringers.
Yeah.
Just because like I saw the samurai and I saw some like the architecture. It looks like classic Japanese in some places.
That's Stormblood.
Stormblood. Yeah. Stormblood. I'm excited for that one. That one I think looks cool because I love the architecture. I love that art style and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. See, there's so much to talk about. But as someone with my experience, I'd still say this game is a must-play. If you like MMOs, you have to try this game. Be warned. Make sure you got a good cup of coffee, energy drink, whatever. Because there's times where the game drags and you just want to fall asleep at your keyboard. And I get it. I've been there. I'm sure a lot of people have been there. But the payoff is worth it. It's how much time you want to put in for how much payoff. The payoff is so high, but you really got to put that time in to get that high payoff.
And again, if you're a person that loves story, that really loves story integrated with gameplay,
a long story,
you might not have a problem getting into this game. It's just the people who may not be a fan of reading a lot of text that you might want to approach this with caution if you're not a big reader.
Let's be honest. There are portions of this game where it becomes a graphic novel. Essentially, it does. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. Interactive novel, that's what I was thinking of. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing, but again, it's a friendly warning. Be prepared. It's worth it. Just be prepared for a lot of reading and a lot of story being dumped.
I feel like we've iterated that 3 times now. So
yes.
Yeah, this might be a good spot to wrap it up. I would actually like to do this again once we've gotten through Heavensward, and maybe even again after the Heavensward patch cycle.
Oh, absolutely.
Finish the game like as it was released, then do this again, and then after the patch cycle.
Absolutely. I have so many thoughts about really in a game I've only put 5 hours into or whatever. That's barely anything in a game like this.
Yeah. Again, I've put in like 60 days worth of over 1,000 hours into this game. And even I'm like, I don't think I've hit every note yet. Yeah. Like I don't even have a house yet. There's the housing stuff, which is a bag of worms.
Yeah.
If I do get a house, there's gardening I could do.
Yeah, see, that's cool.
Like, I haven't even touched some of the savage boss fights. There are the extreme boss fights in Realm Reborn that I've gone into unsynced, which is like I'm going into them at level 80, even though they're made for level 50. I go into them like solo just to finish out the journal that you'll get at the end of Heavensward.
Oh, okay.
There's so much we can talk about, and we will probably talk about it a lot the next time we do this. But for now, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
If you dealt with us for however long this is once I've edited it down.
It could be 20 minutes. It could be 5 days. I don't know.
Yeah, we will sign off for now. I've been Xain.
I have not been Xain.
And see you next time.